Welcome, VIPs, to our weekly program, which consists of 3 parts. The third part are your questions, so please participate. And the first 2 parts are something timely and a definition of terms. We're coming up to 2 holidays. There's the 19th of Kislev, the day that the Alter Rebbe was released from Tsarist imprisonment, and also, of course, Chanukah at the end of the month. The 19th of Kislev is celebrated all over the world because it made the availability of Hasidus possible for the whole world. So here's the story. The first Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneur Zalman, 250 years ago, began to reveal some of the secrets of Torah. Obviously, secrets of Torah were not really meant to be revealed. So he was tampering with a heavenly law, and heaven itself was uncomfortable with the idea. And so it turned out that in the physical world, the king, the Tsar, arrests the Alter Rebbe, questions him, and eventually releases him, saying it's fine. This is reflecting what was going on in heaven. The heavenly courts were debating whether what the Rebbe was doing was kosher, permissible, or not. And when in heaven it was decided that it was okay, then the Tsar here in this plane and on the physical level also decided to allow the Alter Rebbe to continue his teachings. Now, one of the accusations for which the Rebbe was imprisoned was that the Rebbe was supporting the Turks against Russia. They were at war at the time, and the Rebbe was collecting large sums of money and sending it to Israel, to the Jews who lived there, who had a very hard time supporting themselves. And so the Alter Rebbe was supporting the Yishuv, the Jewish existence of the Jewish community in Israel. Of course, Israel then was under Turkish rule. So they contrived this whole scheme that the Alter Rebbe was really sending money to the Turks to support their efforts against Russia. Now, behind every lie, there has to be some grain of truth. They were saying that the Alter Rebbe is supporting the Turks against Russia so that the Alter Rebbe would eventually be anointed as king of Israel. The Turks would be grateful and they would give him that title or that position. So really what the Alter Rebbe wanted was to become the king of the world. Where is the grain of truth in that? The Alter Rebbe wanted to make God king of the world. That everyone should know that there's one king, the true King of Kings, and that is God. When the Rebbe was released, it was considered a huge miracle. It's a very, very uncommon thing to happen. Once you're accused of treason, to be released and permitted to continue what you were doing before is nothing short of miraculous. So not only was the Rebbe allowed to continue to teach Hasidus to the Jewish community, but the Tsar and his ministers and the entire non-Jewish population also recognized that something very holy, something very godly was going on here. And that was the Rebbe's purpose, to make God known and beloved to his creations, to all humans. Now here's the question. Kabbalah is the secret of Torah. There are 4 dimensions. There's the literal meaning, the hinted meaning, and the moral meaning, and the secret meaning. What are the secret meanings of Torah? The Kabbalah. Now, the Kabbalah had already been made public 200 years before the Alter Rebbe in Israel by the Ari, who was a Kabbalist of his time, and he proclaimed that the time had come that this inspiring dimension of the Torah should be made public. There was some controversy back then. There were those who were against it, but it had already become an established fact that you may study Kabbalah. It is no longer restricted the way it had been before. We don't find that the Ari was accused of tampering with the secrets of Torah. The Maharal of Prague also taught Kabbalah. Nobody complained. But when the Baal Shem Tov started teaching Hasidus, and the Alter Rebbe opened it up to the public and explained it and made it accessible to the average person, here there was a complaint in heaven that the secrets are being squandered. What was it that was so secret in the teachings of Chabad that it caused that kind of a stir? The Rebbe was in prison for 53 days, corresponding to the 53 chapters of the Tanya, the first book written by the Rebbe on Chabad teachings. So he sat a day in jail for every chapter of the Tanya. This would mean that every chapter was in some way violating the code that said that the secrets of Torah must remain secret. Now, if you look in the Tanya, it doesn't seem to be anything so controversial or so otherworldly that it mustn't be revealed. It seems like pretty common sense stuff. How to be good, how to overcome your evil inclination, how to elevate your animal soul. Well, that you have an animal soul, that you have a godly soul, and there's a battle between them. Where is the secret that must never be shared? So let's understand what secret means. Why would Torah have a secret dimension? And if it is secret, why do you tell us about it? A person who really knows how to keep a secret is somebody who is so secretive that you don't know that he has a secret. A person who can't really keep a secret, he may not tell you what the secret is, but somehow he lets you know that he has a secret that he can't tell. So if there really is a secret part of Torah, Why does the Torah itself tell us that there's a secret part? And then when you look at the secret part of Torah, whether it's the Kabbalah or Hasidus, it doesn't seem to be justified. What is the secret? It's beautiful, it's wonderful, not dangerous. Why is it a secret? So here's the idea. Secret part of Torah doesn't mean no one must know. Even by a human being, what is it you keep secret? Dangerous information. Not everybody has dangerous information in their lives, unless you're a spy for the CIA or for the Mossad or for the KGB. You don't have secrets. The secret part of your life is the personal, intimate part of your life. It's secret not because no one must know. It's because you reserve it for your inner life, not for your social life. It belongs inside the home, not outside the home. What happens in Vegas? In other words, some things are just a little too personal to share with people who may not appreciate the beauty of it. So if you tell your best friend something really personal about yourself, you've shared a secret. Does that mean that he can now go and tell everybody what you told him? Because it's not a secret anymore. He told you. No. He shared a secret, and it remains a secret. When I tell you something personal about myself, it doesn't make it any less personal. So if you can't treat it with the same sensitivity that I treat it, I will never tell you a secret again. If you don't preserve the beauty and the modesty of the secret, then I can't tell you the secret. But if you know how to keep a secret, then I will share it with you. And if you find someone to share it with properly, in other words, they too will respect the intimacy of it, you can do that. So I can have a secret that everybody knows, my whole community, but they treat it with respect. I mean, you get married, everybody knows you're going to have an intimate relationship. It's not a secret. Yet, nobody is going to ask you what goes on in your private life because they're treating it with respect, with dignity. So a secret doesn't mean no one can know. The secret means only those who appreciate what a secret is may be informed, may be included in the secret. So in the olden days, the Kabbalah was the secret part of Torah, and only the most sensitive, the most intuitive, the most refined among the scholars, among the sages, not every sage. Because being a sage was not enough. You also had to have this appreciation for the privacy and the intimacy of the secret part of Torah. It stands to reason that the most intimate and the most secret part of Torah is the most inspiring. What inspires you? What brings you closer to God than God sharing with you something really private about himself? And that's what it means in the Song of Songs. My beloved takes me into his chamber, brings me into his palace, whatever the expressions are. What does it mean, bring me into the palace? It means reveal something personal. So if we could have a glimpse at those more personal and more intimate parts of God's will and God's wisdom, that would certainly inspire us with a closeness to God, a love for God, an awe for God. Whereas if all we hear are the technical do's and don'ts, obviously that's not as inspiring. That's why 400 years ago, the Ari in Tzfas, in Israel, the Kabbalist, said that the circumstances in which we find ourselves demands a new source of inspiration, and that is the secret part of Torah, and it should now be made available to everyone. Partly out of desperation, and partly because we could better handle it. Briefly, the idea is like this. The desperation we can understand. The exile had gone on way too long. The memory of the event at Sinai was fading and disappearing consciously. Even memory of the temple that stood, that Solomon built, was a long time ago. The sages of the Talmud, long time ago. We're really coming to the end of our rope, and we don't know where to get our inspiration from to not only remain Jewish, but to be inspired by our Jewishness. And so out of desperation, we have to dig deeper into the Torah, into God's revelation, to find a new reservoir of inspiration for our performance of mitzvahs and for our service of God. So that desperation made it necessary to reveal the secret. And what is the danger? The danger is that you will reveal it to people who are callous, who are a little jaded, and they won't appreciate it. It's really like parents don't tell their children how desperately they need their children to be good. We don't reveal that. We tell them they're supposed to be good, that they get us angry when they're not good. We're going to take them out of the will. But we don't reveal the real secret. How desperately we need our children to be good. Not good to us, just good people. When we get desperate because our child is really going off the deep end, then we let it all out. Then we cry our heart out. What are you doing to me? You have no idea how painful this is. I can't see you being, being so corrupt and whatever. And usually the children are surprised. They never suspected that you felt so strongly about this. Why don't we reveal it? We're afraid that they'll laugh. We're afraid that they'll take it wrong. They'll see it as a weakness. So we don't say it unless we're desperate. But then there are those children who are so good and so tuned in to their parents that the parents never suspect that the child will not appreciate their secrets. And so they can share their secrets with those children, confident that the child will take it right. They won't see it as a weakness in the parent, but as a moral sensitivity. Same is true with God. Until we're desperate, there's the possibility that if God shows his vulnerability, that we might lose respect. So what kind of God is this? So instead of appreciating that ultimate vulnerability comes from strength, and it's not a weakness at all. On the contrary, it's a beautiful sensitivity. So in desperation, the Ari said, we're going to reveal this secret, and some people are going to take it wrong, and some people are going to become worse, because now that you've shared the entire secret and they're not impressed, there's really not much left to inspire them with. There's also the possibility of repentance and of tshuva. If God told us right up front the full extent of his vulnerability, how he desperately he needs us to be good, and we weren't good, where would the justification for forgiveness come from? But if he doesn't reveal the full extent, and we don't obey his commandments, he can forgive us. He can justify our sinning on the grounds that he never really told us how important it is. So that's why, for a long time in history, the secret part of Torah was not revealed. But when you're desperate, you reveal it. Also, what does it mean we are desperate? It means we don't appreciate holiness for its own sake. We don't appreciate spiritual stuff. We don't understand right from wrong. We don't even understand what commandment means. So what's left? You have a father who is an absolute genius. Awesome genius. The kids don't understand what he's talking about. E equals MC squared. I don't know what you're talking about. It's gibberish. So they have no respect for their father's intelligence. They have no respect for their father's writings, for his theories, for his brilliance. They don't appreciate it. They tried, they read it, they don't get it, and they dismiss it. But when the father calls them together and says, I need you, I'm not feeling well, they all come running. In other words, when it's the father himself who needs the child, every child will respond. When the father tries to be the teacher, the mentor, the inspiration, doesn't work, because the children are not as intelligent as the father. So here's what happens. As we lose our understanding and our talents in Torah, we're not the scholars that we used to have. We don't understand. We can't even imagine the holiness of a holy temple or of prophets delivering the word of God to people. We can't even imagine what that's like. So the things that used to inspire us go right over our heads. We don't understand. We don't get it. But when you come to people and say, you don't know what tefillin are, you don't know the importance of Shabbos, but he desperately needs you to do it. I hear you. That I can relate to. Precisely because I don't understand his writings, I don't understand his genius, but him, That always gets to me because I am his. I'm his. So if he's my Father in heaven and he needs something from me, of course. Will I now better understand his theory of relativity? No. So the generation that is desperate is also the generation that can be inspired by him and not something about him. So we're not inspired by heaven. We're not intimidated by hell. We don't know those things. But the secret of Torah is he depends on us for this. That I can hear, that I can relate to, and I will do the mitzvah for him. That's the secret part of Torah. That's what was revealed in Hasidus, and that's what inspired the last generations before the coming of Mashiach. Now, very quickly, Chanukah is the same idea. Jews were living Jewish lives in Israel with the temple. Things were great, but pretty much on the surface. What happened in the miracle of Chanukah, if you remember, the Greeks contaminated all the oil. The Jews eventually prevailed, and they came to light the menorah, and all there was contaminated oil. And a miracle happened. They found a little cruse of oil that was only enough for one night or one day lighting, and it lasted for 8 days until they were able to make new oil. What was the miracle? The miracle was that the Jews at that time did not use the available oil, the contaminated oil, which was permissible. They went looking for oil that had never been contaminated. In simple language, on the revealed level of Jewish life, they could have used the contaminated oil and it would have been okay. But on the secret part of Torah, in other words, the personal, intimate part of Torah, something in the inside, the secret part of the Jews, did not allow them to compromise and use contaminated oil. They dug deep and they found the oil that is never contaminated, can't be contaminated. It's the secret part of Torah that is always inspiring and it's always pure. And what is that? The more intimate connection that we have to God, the inner motivation for doing his commandments. And that's what it means. They found a cruse of oil that still had the seal. It was still secret. It was untouched, unblemished. So Chanukah celebrates the same idea that we got past the surface. We contacted the inner stirrings of our soul that corresponds to the inner stirrings of God's soul, and we perform the mitzvah on the purest level. Second part of our program is a definition. What is the definition of the word holy? Kadosh, Kedusha, holiness, holiness. What is holiness? What is the difference between holiness and godliness? They're not the same. Holiness has an equal and opposite unholiness. For everything holy, there is something unholy. Everything holy can also be contaminated or corrupted, and it becomes unholy. Godliness can't be corrupted, and there's no opposite to godliness. So they are very different. Let's understand what they are. Definition of holiness. God is the creator. The world, the universe, is his creation. There are those things in the universe that do not reflect and do not reveal the fact that it was created. On the contrary, the physical, material existence of the world seems to say, I am, I always was, I don't need anybody to create me. You look at a stone in the field. The stone doesn't say, I'm a creation. No, the stone says, I'm here, I am. Does not in any way reflect a creator. That's what makes it the lowest possible creation, because there's no hint of its creator in its appearance. Of course, if you use your brain, you say, wait a minute, where did this thing come from? No, it could not have created itself. And no, it hasn't been sitting here forever. So who created it? Where did it come from? But that's an insight. The stone itself says nothing about a creator. You have to get past the appearance to realize that there's something else going on. Yes, the same is true. You look at a stone with your eye, you see one thing, you look at it under a microscope, and it's a completely different picture. So, the stone, we might say, is opaque. It doesn't let the creator shine through. It completely blocks the fact that it is being created at this very moment by a creator. That's opaque. There are some things or some people who are not so opaque. They allow godliness, the creator, to shine through. You would call that translucent, like the shade on a lamp. You can't see the shape of the bulb, but you can see that there's light. It's not dark. The light comes through the shade, but in a diminished form, so that you can't see the luminary, you can't see what it is that is creating that light, but you know there's light. That's translucent. The miracle of birth. You don't see the creator, but suddenly you're aware that there is a miracle of birth. You don't remain indifferent. It's translucent. You know that there's a magnificent creator behind it all. You have no idea what he wants. So it's translucent. And then there's transparent. There are things in this world that are holy because they are transparent and do not hide or deny or block their creator from view. Like, for example, the scroll of a Torah. It doesn't draw your attention away from God, it draws your attention to God. And that's why we will kiss the Sefer Torah. We will kiss the mezuzah, because it's not a parchment scroll. It's godliness. It's God's will wrapped up in a parchment scroll. So what we're seeing is God without any obstruction. That's why the Torah is holy and the mezuzah is holy. Same is true when we say a holy person. A holy person is not someone who draws attention to himself, to his genius, to his character, to his miracles. That's not holy. That's almost opaque. All you see is a magnificent human being, no hint of its creator, not even a hint of the great mother that raised this child, this person. He is so opaque. All credit comes to him. All attention comes to him. Some people are not that opaque. They're translucent. They will make you very aware of how indebted they are to their parents for making them who they are. So there's that story in the Talmud where a sage saw a man standing at the side of the road who was extremely ugly. And the sage said to him, "How ugly you are." And the man said, "Why complain to me? Complain to my maker." And he wasn't as ugly as he was a moment ago. The ugliness that the sage saw was the opaqueness, never having admitted to a creator. This man always believed that he was self-made, that he was in control of his life. He was the master of his fate and the captain of his soul. And this guy came along, the sage came along and said, "Really? So why did you make yourself so ugly?" And he had to admit, somebody made him ugly. It's not him. So he admitted to a creator, and he wasn't as ugly as he was a minute ago. So opaqueness is ugliness. It's narcissistic. It's petty. I am, and that's all there is. So a holy person would never draw attention to himself. A truly holy person would have the effect on those who see him that they start to think, maybe I should be a better person. Maybe I should serve God better. You saw a human being, but your thoughts went to God. That's what the ancient prophets were. Nobody looked at Isaiah and said, "Wow, look at that guy." You looked at Isaiah and you thought, I really should keep kosher. You saw Isaiah walk down the street and you thought, I got to stop cheating. I have to stop eating on Yom Kippur. Your thoughts went to God, Isaiah's creator. And that's why in a number of places in the prophets, people say to the prophet, I sinned against your God, which is kind of strange because it's everybody's God. The point that they're saying is, I sinned against the God that you make me think of, that you make me aware of. That's called a holy person. So what is the definition of holiness? Transparent. There is a part of our soul that is transparent. Doesn't draw attention to itself. It draws attention to the purpose for which we exist. That's an inspiring human being. But if somebody is preaching religion and God and morality, and you come away impressed with the person, you know that that was not godly. That was not holy. May have been spiritual, but spiritual can be evil. Because there's an opposite to spiritual. The good side, the bad side. There were some very spiritual people in history who were very evil. But godliness, true holiness, means transparent. You can't corrupt transparency. You can block it. You can't corrupt it. So if you have a window with a clean, transparent glass, you're not going to see the glass. You're going to see the scene behind the glass. Now, you can easily draw a shade and block the view, but you haven't made the glass any less transparent, even if you put all sorts of gunk on the glass. It's still transparent. Just remove the gunk, and you will see beyond the glass. So we have to achieve holiness by contacting that part in ourselves that is really transparent, not opaque. It's not about me. It's about my Creator. That's our definition for the word Kadosh, or holy. Okay, questions? Hello out there. Any questions? Yes?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, a question that came up regarding the first part of our conversation about learning Hasidus and what it does for the person and what it does for the world. What would you suggest is the best way to start learning more Hasidus? Is there any practical book or website or classes that a person can take or study to really start from the beginning on understanding Hasidus?
Luckily, maybe it's not luck, fortunately, there are so many available classes online so that you're not plowing through the material on your own, maybe not familiar with the language or with the vocabulary. Go online, Chabad.org, 11213.org. It's goodtoknow.org. What is it, TorahCafe.org. And you will learn a lot of Hasidus. And it'll be understandable, available, and convenient, because you can tune it in anytime, anywhere. So in the olden days, you would have to learn a new language. You would have to learn a whole new vocabulary. And even then, you may not really understand because it's all new territory. Now it's all available. So go online, hook up with these classes. You have daily Tanya on Chabad.org. You have lectures and classes and discussions on every subject in Hasidus. It's all there. Help yourself. The smorgasbord of Hasidic thought.
Thank you very much. What about a practical custom? Is it proper to give children gifts on Chanukah, or is that a mixture? Is that a custom that came from a non-Jewish source? Especially when it comes to especially when it comes to young children.
Yeah, it's never bad or wrong to give a gift. But the Jewish custom is to give money, coins. So if you want to follow the custom, the Chanukah gelt is a holy tradition, sanctified over the generations. In addition, if you want to give a gift, that's fine. You want to give a gift every day, that's okay. You know, if the kids are having a great time and they appreciate Chanukah. But the biggest gift you can give them is the respect and the devotion to the mitzvah of Chanukah, to actually lighting the candles, to saying the proper blessings and the proper prayers for the day. In other words, let's not get distracted by the material pleasantness. Let's get our kids to really appreciate the significance of it. I said before that the Jews went looking for pure oil They went looking to find the innocence that was never corrupted. That is such an important lesson for our children. If something happens and you feel like you've lost your innocence, you've sinned, you've made mistakes, you blew it, you can regain your innocence. Look a little deeper and you'll find the oil that lights up your life that was never contaminated. It's coming from a childlike innocence, even though you haven't always behaved childlike innocent. But it's always there. That's the miracle of Chanukah. If kids don't know this, you haven't really prepared them for life, no matter how many gifts you give them every day of Chanukah. So sure, have some fun, but don't let that become what Chanukah is all about.
Is it possible that the gifts of money will have that same effect? Right? Sometimes children will look forward to Hanukkah just for the Hanukkah geld.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also not good.
It's good, but it should not become the focus of the meaning of Hanukkah. I actually gave my grandchildren years ago, I gave some of my grandchildren a silver dollar coin. They were upset because they couldn't peel it and get to the chocolate that was inside. So we have children even confused about money. But there's nothing greater, there's no greater gift than letting children know that there's an innocence inside of them that will always be available to them. That's the Hanukkah light. We say it's the victory of good over evil, darkness, light over darkness, religious freedom. Yeah. Religious freedom as a political statement, that's understandable, that's common, that's reasonable. But there's also religious freedom from your own failures, the discouragement, where you feel that you're no longer free to be godly because you blew it, because something ungodly happened to you, and now you're not qualified, you're not entitled anymore, you're undeserving. The miracle of Hanukkah says, purity is our truest, most natural condition. And no matter how much you abuse it, it won't go away. You are still capable of pure innocence. Just dig a little deeper. That's a gift. You don't have to peel it.
Here's a question on Hashgacha Pratis, which means divine providence. We know that everything that happens to us, or anything that happens in the world, is by divine providence. But here's an angle that needs to be clarified. What if, because of someone's ignorance and lack of understanding the long-term consequences, a parent acted in a way that had decades-long seemingly negative effects on a precious child? How do we understand that it is Hashgacha Pratis, the innocent child should be hurt? And if we understand, how does that make anything better? Can the parents still rectify the damage? If so, how?
Why is the question only on a child? What if an adult is abused? In other words, when something bad happens to you, is it divine providence? So if it's an act of God, we say, yes, see, that's divine providence. But if it's a human being that is hurting me, all of a sudden we lose sight of God and we think it's the person doing it without God's permission. The fact that you don't have parents, God forbid, you're orphaned at a young age, is that divine providence? Or are you angry at your mother for dying? If you have parents who simply are helpless, they don't know what to do to help you with your problems, That's not divine providence. You have parents who are actually destructive, harmful. That's not divine providence. Why do some people have really great parents and I have helpless parents? That's not divine providence. The secret is when a person, by their own free choice, fails in their responsibility and their morality, and they hurt you, whether it's your parents and you're the child, or whether it's an adult against an adult. When another human being misbehaves, the consequence that you experience out of that is divinely ordained. In other words, the child is not in the wrong place at the wrong time and is collateral damage. Because the father was bad, that's why the child suffers. No such thing. No child suffers if that suffering is not in some way meant and intended for the child to experience. So the child should take a hint and say, if God is putting this on my plate, I guess he believes in me and knows that I can handle it. So instead of just being bitter against the parent, it becomes your divine providence, and you live with it and thrive from it and grow from it.
What about the other way, the guilt of the parent who feels that they hurt their child?
Right. So the remorse, when parents realize that they did wrong by their child, the remorse is very important and very productive because it makes the parent a better person. But to parent to think, all my child's problems come from me, that's playing God. You're not becoming a better person. You're becoming a more arrogant person. To think that other human beings suffer because of your foolishness or your ignorance or your carelessness, that's playing God. I mean, let's take a really painful example. A child suffers terribly and commits suicide. And the parent feels that it's his fault, her fault, and actually believes that the child would be alive were it not for him or her, the mother or the father. Is that not the height of arrogance? Is life and death now in your hands? So of course you made your kid miserable, and for that you should be very remorseful. But the child's destiny was in your hands? That's very arrogant. So yes, you made bad choices, and yes, you had bad intentions. But you know there are parents that are even worse than you, and their kid doesn't commit suicide. Or the child tries to commit suicide, but it doesn't happen. So to think that your bad choices dictate the destiny of another human being, you're out of control. You're playing God. Don't do that. So remorse for your own failings, yes. To take credit or responsibility for another human being's fate, that's in the hands of God. You're not God. Especially since you made mistakes. So you can't be the one who blew it and messed up your kid, and then you're God on top of that. No, you're not. You're just a human being who made mistakes. And if you regret those mistakes, you are now a better human being. But your child has its own relationship with God, has his own destiny, his own divine providence, and you can't mess it up for another human being. A cute way of thinking about it. Somebody mentioned, do you realize that as old as God is, he has no grandchildren? Isn't that sad? It's so sad. He has no grandchildren because everyone is his child. So I'm God's child. Shouldn't my children be his grandchildren? No, they are his child. In other words, they have a connection to God independent of me. So I cannot ruin their relationship with God. I cannot change their fate or interfere with divine providence. I cannot change what God has in store for them because it's between them and God directly. They're not grandchildren. They're certainly not stepchildren. So no, you cannot ruin your kid's life. You can do things that are thoughtless and painful, but then how the child handles it, responds to it, suffers from it, this is beyond your control. That's why good parents, God forbid, can have unhappy children. Bad parents can have amazingly healthy children. So there's something beyond our control that we have to recognize. Not that that excuses your bad behavior, but your bad behavior should humble you, not make you think you're God.
Very interesting. We're gonna end up with one more question. This is a question of if someone is working on their ability to be humble, otherwise known as the word bittul, should they reject any idea of making a difference in a way of writing a book or starting an organization or helping an organization? There seems to be an internal conflict between who am I to make a difference? I am nobody, so therefore I should just keep quiet. Wouldn't it be selfish to speak up instead of being quiet?
So we just finished saying, holiness is transparency. Transparent doesn't mean I'm nothing. That's useless. Humility, true bittul, doesn't mean I'm nothing, I should be quiet. True humility means I am here to facilitate God's presence on earth, not to draw attention to myself. So if you're writing a book and it's a worthy book and it brings godliness into the world and somebody can be inspired by that book, that's what you're here for. But your objective is not to become a famous author. Your objective is to inspire people with a book. So if you're truly transparent, you don't go hide in the basement so that nobody will see you. You allow God to show through you by being transparent. And then you don't have to hide. You're transparent. Nobody's going to notice how great you are because they're going to see how great your Creator is. Somebody once wrote a book and said to me, I'm not putting my name on it. That's too arrogant. I said, no, it's not. Put your name on it so people will know who wrote this stupid book. In other words, you're really protecting yourself in case the book is not so popular. In case people think it's not so smart, you don't want them to know that you wrote it. So be humble and put your name on the line and let people judge your book. But by hiding, you're simply concealing your arrogance. You're not being humble. So sometimes by putting your name on the book, you're not looking for glory. You're opening yourself up to criticism. Everybody has an opinion about the author of a book. So don't be afraid. Face it. Take it on the chin. But you should write a book. We need books. Good books. We need good books. Even though people don't read so much, but they read. And when you're an author, you enter a different realm of influence. Authors have great influence. Maybe even more than podcasts. You see it, you forget it. You hear it, you lose it. You have a book, it sits there. It's got some weight to it or something. I don't know what it is, but books have always, maybe they're not as popular, but they're always respected. An author is a respectable, it's a respectable piece of work. So yes, if you can write a book, by all means. Don't hide in the basement.
How does this jive with the idea that you're supposed to give charity anonymously? Or is that two separate things?
Yeah, that's two separate things. The virtue of giving charity anonymously is that it doesn't make the recipient uncomfortable. You're not forcing him to feel indebted to you, to feel like he's a victim. It's much more dignified for the recipient if he doesn't know where the money is coming from. But it's not like you're denying that you give charity. There's no reason to deny it. You give charity, you let people know you give charity, and inspires others to give charity. Charity shouldn't be a secret. It should just be considerate of the recipient. That itself is a form of charity.
Amazing. Okay, to end off, I'd like to mention a few things that are upcoming, and it's good to know. It's good to know, tomorrow morning, Rabbi Friedman is off to Minnesota for the Women's Convention, for the National Women's Convention, which will take place over Shabbos. I think the week after that, you're going to Monaco for a Tour de France, for a tour for the first Shabbos of Chanukah, the Shabbos before Chanukah. And we also just finished our online course, which was well attended. Thank you everyone for coming. On the topic of intimacy and marriage. The feedback has been tremendous. People are saying that changes our lives. We need everyone to listen to it. So that's exciting. And they also asked that we do one for men. So that'll be coming up in the next month or two. So Baruch Hashem, things are moving along, and we want to thank everybody that joined the VIP for your support and for joining, for helping us get the word out there. And God willing, with your help, with Rabbi Friedman, the internet, and you, it's a lethal combination, and that'll absolutely bring Mashiach. I think it could happen. What's the positive of lethal? It's potent. So have a wonderful night, everybody, and God willing, we will see you next week, same time, same place. All the best.